Hello, I'm Grin, and welcome to this, the final build request for the month of May, Star Wars month, coming out almost an entire month after Star Wars month. And while I would say last but not least, unfortunately that wouldn't be entirely true. There's a good reason that this vehicle wasn't featured too heavily in the 4th Star Wars vehicle showcase, and that is namely because, well, it doesn't really work too well. So if you're looking for an upgrade from the advanced turret, this is definitely not the video for you, but if you're looking for a far less functional turret that kind of resembles one from Star Wars, well, then you might be in the right place. This deceptively difficult request comes from Primus117, who has asked for a Death Star turret. This vehicle immediately presented more trouble than any of the other replicas I've done this Star Wars month, as unlike all of those which were pretty much standard vehicles, the Death Star turret, being a turret, actually requires some extra levels of functionality. And as I said earlier, its build is deceptively difficult, as while it looks like a very simple design, it does not lend itself well to the way turrets work within Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts. So what's the problem, you might well ask? Well, rather simply, an Imperial Death Star turret is very, very blocky, which might sound like a strange thing to complain about in a game in which you build all things out of blocks, but the main problem here is when something's very, very blocky, it creates a great deal of friction. As you can see, I put a great deal of effort in trying to replicate the shape of the Death Star turret, because it's a replica, while trying to hide within it all of the necessities for functionality. But in doing so, if you were to compare the design that I'm building at the moment to either the simple turret or the advanced turret, you can pretty much immediately tell that they are almost polar opposites. The ideal design for a turret is for it to be mostly lightweight, especially in the top area, as you're going to have to move it around a lot, and also for the joints to not be over-encumbered. And perhaps of most importance, on the areas you want moving, you don't want them to be large and flat and pressed against each other, as once again, it creates friction, makes it difficult to move, sometimes forces a bit to move that you don't want to move, and even worse, can sometimes cause damage to your vehicle. So compare that design description to the Imperial Death Star turret's X-axis pivot point, and you can probably see where the problem arises. It's literally two large flat areas with almost no space in between it. And if you watch the Grin builds of this video going up tomorrow, you'll see that I constantly went back and forth trying to get this joint right. In the end, I ended up settling on a bit of a strange design, but it seems to work at least kind of okay. It does stick a lot, and it's not as responsive as I would like, but I mean it turns, so that's something. So how did I do it? Well, firstly, the joint isn't as flushed as it should look. The way I did this is it is sitting on a bed of bumpers, which makes the turning a lot easier, and those bumpers are pretty well hidden by a couple of L blocks. They're not as well hidden as I would like, but this is the compromise I had to make. It was either have the bumpers clearly visible and allow the turret to turn easily, or do my best to hide the bumpers, make them not turn as well, but preserve some of the integrity of the vehicle's look. And then, to try to combat the fact that it's so very top-heavy, the actual tow bars that allow it to turn are kind of connected to a spine that sit lower in the base of the vehicle than you might well imagine. Once again, functionality-wise, the top should be far lighter, and the tow bar joint should be up around where the actual bumpers are, so just the same with the joint setup, it could be done better, but in order to get it to work with the design, I've instead opted to go for a little bit of a compromise. And then finally, the actual gun barrels of the turret are, once again, definitely unfortunately far less than optimal. The best way of doing these Y-axis pivot points is, as you've seen on the advanced turret, it having a sort of a central swivel and it being well balanced. However, for it to work with the Star Wars design, the only way I could do the joint is having it attached on one of the ends rather than being a pivot, and then having most of the weight on the front of the barrels. There is a gyro attached to it towards the back, hidden in the bit that is within the vehicle, but it really doesn't help a great deal. To reiterate, this is pretty much the worst possible design you could do for a functional turret within Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts, but in order to make it actually look like the one from Star Wars, I really had to cut a lot of corners. So if you're looking for a smooth working turret that does everything you want to do every single time and doesn't get weirdly stuck or sometimes doesn't respond to what you're trying to make it do, then I highly suggest you don't use this vehicle. But if you want one that looks pretty good and kind of resembles one from Star Wars, then this might fulfill that need. Well, look, in my defense, if the Death Star turret in Star Wars actually worked that well, then maybe the Death Star wouldn't have been blown up. And so, with all of that said and done, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, I have been and still am Grim Grindle. if you want to build this vehicle in your own save for some ungodly reason, then what's going to follow now is the layer by layer. If you want to see the Grin builds for it, that should be going up tomorrow, and it's a pretty long one. I think it's about 40 minutes or something. And as always, if you want to follow me on social media, the link to my Twitter is in the description below, and the link to the Channel Grim and Grin Discord, the Echo Chamber, is also provided.